Buenos días, good morning. Presidentes Pedro Sánchez, Ministra Reyes Marot,
Prime Minister.
and Chair of the General Assembly, Secretary General, ministers and ambassadors from all over the world. First and foremost, thank you during the most difficult time ever in our history for your dedication to our sector and for your defence of our sector, a sector that brings enormous economic wealth and stability as we do what we do best in travel and tourism, connecting people with new cultures and new experiences. There has never been a more important time for the private and public sectors to walk hand in hand. Times of crisis need unity. Now is not the time to alienate our African friends. Over 60 countries have moved to put travel bans in place on southern African states. But I am convinced the science is not there to support this action. But first, let us go over some numbers. We all know these numbers very well. We have to repeat this because still in some quarters of governments, the value to people's lives and livelihoods from travel and tourism is not fully appreciated or understood. Pre-COVID, our sector contributed 10.4% to global GDP and represented 1 in 10 jobs. And for the last decade, 1 in 4 new jobs were created in travel and tourism. Y muchísimas gracias, señora ministra, porque...
And thank you so much, Madam Minister, for what you said about gender issues and the role of women in our sector. That is incredibly important. Thank you.
2020, we saw 62 million of the 334 million people working in our sector lose their jobs and their livelihoods. We saw almost 50% from our sector, some $4.5 trillion, absolutely wiped out in 1 year. And in Spain, the wonderful country that is hosting us today, those numbers were more acute, with tourism representing 14% of national GDP and suffering a consequential 63% drop. Our sector's impact on people's lives, both directly and indirectly, is immense. All of us here want to restore those 62 million jobs. While some regions, especially the US and China, are seeing a good recovery, mainly due to domestic travel activity, this will not be enough. The global economy will only recover if international travel is restored. WTTC estimates show that by 2022, our sector could support 324 million jobs, only 10 million below 2019 levels. But if, and only if, we step back from introducing blanket travel bans. In fact, our latest research shows that if governments carried on opening up and harmonized travel rules, we could see the return of up to 88% of travel and tourism's contribution to global GDP by the end of next year. That represents an eye-watering $8 trillion to the global economy, and that is a prize that is within our grasp. But confidence is fragile. Consumers are weary of restrictions that continue to change erratically. There is pent-up demand for travel, but dramatic actions taken by governments make travelers more cautious. And closing frontiers does not work. This virus does not respect borders. The World Health Organization has said that closing countries causes untold economic and social damage to livelihoods and well-being. WHO believes there is very limited benefit to closing borders, and it comes at a huge social and economic cost. Yesterday, at the Assembly, the UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, described it as an economic catastrophe. Today, I call on governments to review this decision and lift the restrictions on Africa quickly. I want to offer solutions. At WTTC, we represent the private sector that has been hit very hard. Many small businesses and some large ones will not survive this non-stop onslaught. Some have already folded. But where there is crisis, there is opportunity and there is optimism. The private sector has moved fast to adapt and has shown real grit and agility, working with governments hand in hand. So, what are the things I'm proposing? First, let's get the world vaccinated. We cannot wait 5 years for 4 billion people to get their first jab. It's immoral, it's unethical, and it's dangerous. Let's see licenses granted to countries to produce their own vaccines, and let's see some of the very wealthy industries who have done extremely well during this pandemic assist financially. Travel and tourism has a big heart and a big network. We can and we are helping. And I applaud the work of COVAX and UNICEF, relentlessly highlighting this critical issue. Second, rather than closing borders, let's follow the WHO guidance and use social measures that we know work, things like wearing masks, physical distance, and regular rapid testing. I'm going to give you an example. Of the 9.2 million PCR tests paid for by people returning to England over the last 18 months, only 0.8% were positive, while the rate of the infection in the community was running at 8%. Third, let's base risk around individuals' health status rather than putting whole countries into quarantine. Finally, today, WTTC is publishing a report to get people moving again, simply. If the virus was not bad enough on its own, governments have introduced a level of conflicting red tape that defies logic and sometimes science. We had hoped and campaigned for one unified health pass where governments joined up systems to make it easier for people to travel under a single, internationally recognized system. That is sadly not going to happen. We have therefore identified 4 strong leaders. The EU Digital COVID Certificate. I shared a platform with the Ministra in Évora in Portugal, and at that stage, 43 countries had adopted this incredible scheme. That number, I understand now, Ministra, is at 51 countries. The EU COVID Certificate is an enormous success for Europe, and it's issued over 600 million digital passes since its launch in July. The second major runner is the ICAO Visible Digital Seal. It builds on cross-border e-passport technology for easier integration with immigration procedures, and it's recently been adopted by countries like Australia. The DIVOC certificate, developed and used in India, has issued more than 1.2 billion certificates in India and Southeast Asia. And finally, in the US and Canada, smart health cards have been developed by a consortium of more than 200 of the world's largest health and technology companies, including Microsoft, Apple, and IBM. These schemes are all compliant with WHO guidance and are rapidly being adopted by vast swathes of the globe, and we encourage all countries in this room today here to join one of these schemes and remove the use of handwritten paper cards. But we're also recommending the development of an app, or we might like to call it a national portal, that sits on top of these schemes. This means that individuals only have to share data on their vaccination, test status, their health status with the country they want to travel to, and their personal information is held securely by them. Let's imagine I was visiting the amazing Luxor parade and that His Excellency Khaled El Anani pioneered last month in Egypt, or the groundbreaking investment event held in Saudi in October, led by His Excellency Al-Khatib. I would simply upload my details into a national portal, the Egyptian or Saudi authorities would accept them, and through the portal I would be granted a green tick to travel. That means everything would be completed before I get to the airport, and border officials, as I land, could welcome me quite simply, and I could carry on walking straight through. It's a digital solution to a complex problem, an example of how we can leapfrog technologies and make customers' journeys truly seamless. However, the biggest challenge humanity faces is climate change. As sea levels rise, we suffer extreme temperatures and rapid deforestation. No one knows better than us in this room that the importance of long-term sustainable travel. Therefore, WTTC members felt our sector needed an umbrella overview of our carbon impact on the environment and our road to decarbonisation. I hope you will all find the WTTC's roadmap to net zero by 2050 helpful. It pulls together aviation, cruise, travel agents, hotels, and tour operators, and it sets out a very clear path for each of those industries and for the whole of our sector to play our part. And I applaud the work of the Saudi government in this arena. Thank you so much for reaching out to the private sector. We have established ways of working together that we would never have achieved pre-pandemic. Some models of the private-public partnerships forged during this crisis are so strong that some communities are looking at how we can use these strong bonds and solution-focused working to solve other social issues like crime and poverty. It just shows you the power of travel and tourism. Thank you very much. Muchísimas gracias.